Good day, I'm Martin Gagel with Market Radius Research. Today, we've got a very special guest, Gabriel Rene, CEO of VERS Technologies. VERS is a cognitive computing company specializing in next-generation artificial intelligence with some of the most impressive team members I've seen in a long time in a Canadian junior story. Gabriel is also the international best-selling author of the book, The Spatial Web, How Web 3.0 Will Connect Humans, Machines, and AI to Transform the World. But please remember, this is neither recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. Rene, thank you very much for joining us. And just to start it off with a bit of fun in the whole artificial intelligence theme, I typed into Chat GPT, how would I welcome Gabriel Rene in the tone of David Letterman? And so, all right, we've got a real treat for you tonight. Our next guest is a bona fide AI expert and the brains behind VERS Technologies. Please give it up for Gabriel Rene, everyone.
Thank you. That's excellent, Martin.
I just got to live my little teenage fantasy there of being the David Letterman. So thank you very much.
That's wonderful. I appreciate that. That was great. All right. Well, I think we can start today by just kind of giving everyone about 20 minutes background context on what the company is, who we are, what we're building, why it's important, and then jump into questions at the second half here. So
excellent. Thank you.
The company is called VERS. The background context, of course, is that the AI era has arrived. And in just the last less than 90 days, we have seen a massive explosion of AI technologies, really rapid user adoption, incredibly large valuations. And for those of you that might be looking for some context, my goal here is to provide you with that context and let you also understand how VERS has positioned itself, how we anticipated this explosion, and why we think we're in a great position to help foster it and benefit from it. So what you really have here is the result of about almost 15 years of research around a type of AI that is called machine learning, more specifically deep learning, or what people might have heard of as neural nets. And there has been sort of limited traction in that space for the last decade or so. There's a lot of promises around IBM Watson. We saw it all beat everybody on Jeopardy. It was supposed to, solve cancer. It got sold off for parts. Teslas are sort of, and most of the autonomous vehicle companies have all kind of failed in the last year here, or failed to achieve their autonomous driving goals. Around Thanksgiving, no one was thinking very much about artificial intelligence. By the time we roll into Christmas, a lot of people start talking about it because Chat GPT, Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, Midjourney, a handful of these names you might have heard are part of a new class kind of built on this previous layer of neural nets called generative AI. And what generative AI does basically is it's like a content generating artificial intelligence capability. And so Chat GPT, you give it a bit of text, you say, hey, I'd like to introduce my guest today in the style of David Letterman, and it generates that for you. That's what Martin just demonstrated. And of course, kids are using it to write essays. Marketing folks are using it to draft website copy and email copy. And it's starting to really sort of shake the foundations of the World Wide Web. We've seen search engines like Bing kind of spring back to life here by adding some of the Chat GPT features to it. Google attempting the same thing and sort of, fouling the ball, if you will. In addition to just text, though, these generative AIs of different classes are able to generate different kinds of things. So not just text as an output, but imagery. You see here like an astronaut mowing a lawn, right? A bunny rabbit with sunglasses and a beanie on. These within minutes are generating, high quality, photo quality images, photos, paintings. And this whole thing is called prompting, where you essentially give a set of text instructions and you get this output. We're about to see ones where you can actually get a song Hey, I'd like to get a song in this style. We're starting to see video. So, the reports coming out, 90% of online content could be generated by AI by 2025. Well, that's a huge shift from Web 2.0 when user-generated content was the thing. Well, now we're talking about AI generating content. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, headlines, infinite AI interns for everyone. And then everyone, I think, is probably aware of the $10 billion investment that Microsoft made into OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, at a $29 billion valuation. So what's happening here in the background is, as we went into the holidays, just before that, when ChatGPT rolled out in December, it was the fastest growing website or application in history. So 5 days to get to 1 million users. 10 million users within a month. At 60 days, we're at 100 million. This is 10xing on a monthly basis. Now, this is unprecedented growth, and the kind of exponentials we're looking at, the kind of investment flooding into AI companies is unprecedented. But it is trying to kind of let us know that there is this shift coming. And many people might say that this would have been unpredictable. What I'd just like to share is that both in the book that I and my co-founder, Dan Mapes, wrote, and as a company, we did predict this and actually built the company around this point in time. So I'm going to give you a little snapshot of what that means and how we got there. Every 15 years, the entire technology stack evolves. So in the technology investment world, most of the time, a company is emerging and saying, hey, we're disruptive. We're disrupting, we're Uber, we're going to disrupt the taxi industry. We're Airbnb, we're going to disrupt the hotel industry, so on and so forth. But every 15 years, something different happens. The entire stack shifts, and parties become the infrastructure layer upon which those unicorns are born, upon which the next million disruptions happen. So if you start back in 1977, you got this classic computer stack. This is all you need to know about computer science. There's always a data tier, a logic tier, and an interface tier. So when the PC came out, we had big computer-sized computers before that. We use programs as the main point of sort of the value proposition of the application layer. The desktop was the interface. The data's on the local drive. And you have an entire set of industries that emerge around those capabilities. 15 years later, 1992, the World Wide Web emerges. And now actually everyone shifts to websites. The data's on someone else's drive, right? And the browser becomes the interface. And most of the Web 1.0 companies we know benefited from existing at one or more of these layers. 2007, 15 years, Steve Jobs walks out introducing iPhone, right? Now it's about mobile applications, not websites so much anymore. The interface becomes touch screen. It's more intuitive way of sort of browsing instead of keyboards and mouse. And the data is now in the cloud. 2022, there you go, 15 years again, what we would describe as Web 3.0, where the logic layer now moves to artificial intelligence. The interface becomes increasingly more based on natural interfaces, which can be everything from voice to gesture to holographic interfaces. You're going to see Apple come out with their new augmented reality glasses. It goes from a single device to like networks of devices, the so-called Internet of Things. Today you have many different devices. You've got wearables, you've got smart home devices. You might have a car that's beginning to drive itself. So the entire stack shifts, okay, about every 15 years. And you can see that plain as day here. Now, what that means is that there are new opportunities that emerge. So we founded VERSS in 2018 under the auspices that we would be in a position to basically develop the key infrastructure upon which artificial intelligence applications would be built. We call this Cosmos. So essentially they're COSM OS. It's our operating system to build, run, and sell AI applications. And I can tell you this is a big deal because the people that were building websites when the iPhone came out and then Android started building mobile apps. And that's what we all started using as consumers. Well, guess what every app developer, about 10 million plus of them, were trying to do on the day after New Year's, trying to figure out how and where they can start to build artificial intelligence-based applications. So VERS's position is to basically launch right at this point in time with our Cosmos platform positioned to become part of that key infrastructure upon which these millions of AI applications will be built. So Cosmos is essentially, just think of it as an operating system hosted in the cloud to build, run, and sell AI applications. Now, as Martin kindly introduced me in the form of David Letterman, my name's Gabriel Rene. I'm the CEO of the company. I'm also the author with my co-founder of this book. It has that graphic of showing the sort of the multiple stages of the web and its evolution, which we released in 2019. So you can check my receipts on that. And what I've done is I put together a team of some of the best people known for 30 years working in and around Silicon Valley in California, deep tech experts in AI and robotics and enterprise software backgrounds, out of Microsoft and Honeywell and Amazon and Intel and Apple and Accenture, and combined the sort of deep tech and big tech team with really the world's leading neuroscientists in a category of neuroscience called computational neuroscience. And essentially what that is a fancy way of saying it's the study of how the brain processes information and how you can reflect that in software. Now, this team is led by our new chief scientist who'd been an advisor to the company for a couple of years. This is an article from 2018 from Wired magazine describing Professor Karl Friston as the genius neuroscientist who might hold the key to true AI. And in fact, Karl's background is fascinating. He, aside from being a doctor as well in psychiatry, Karl is essentially invented the mathematics that is what fMRI scans, brain scans, are based on today. He's one of the most cited scientists in history, arguably the top neuroscientist in the world, according to Semantic Scholar. And Karl's sort of second act is that he uncovered the underlying physics behind how intelligence is processed in the brain. So what does that get us to? We're building digital brains. And so we call these COSMs. These are knowledge-oriented software models. And instead of a machine learning process, which is the state of the art of AI today, which is essentially out of the lineage of statistics, this is actually born out of neuroscience. And this is the process of biological intelligence represented as opposed to, say, like a machine learning process. So it's far more efficient and actually can learn and adapt in real time. So today's AIs, even the state-of-the-art ones getting these multi-billion-dollar valuations, are of a class typically called artificial narrow intelligence. Now think of these as single-purpose tools. We mentioned this before. ChatGPT is about text. Midjourney is about images. You have other ones that are emerging around audio or around video, right? So these are kind of like hammer, wrench, screwdrivers kind of thing. What we're developing is closer to what's considered the holy grail of AI, which is known as artificial general intelligence. And this is an AI that can learn and adapt like humans. We call these general intelligent agents. And as opposed to a single purpose tool that's mainly looking at historical data and pattern recognition, this is a generally intelligent agent that can learn from real-time information, incorporate new knowledge into its model of the world, and adapt in real time. And you can start to imagine why this would be so much more useful for many applications in the world. And we'll talk about some of those shortly. So what you get is this new class of not AI, artificial intelligence, but what we call IAs, intelligent agents. Now, the kind of magic trick here to think about is the following. It turns out that in the Web 1.0, Web 2.0 era, where you could go all the way back to the beginning of personal computing, the idea that computers were going to make our lives less complicated and easier to manage has sort of increasingly been the pitch. And whereas there's an amazing benefits that have come from access to information and all the capabilities and inventions around this, it turns out humans are a pretty bad interface to our technology, right? We have to go in and pull information out. You have to go search on Google. Google doesn't even give you an answer, just gives you sort of a list of results you have to go hunt and peck. You want to go look for a home. You want to order a sandwich. Everything is sort of a list format that you have to go hunt at. And then you're bombarded with notifications from various systems and devices. The holy grail here is actually an agent that works for you on your behalf and actually becomes the main interface to all of the computing in your life. So it can search the web for you. It can search your files and give you answers and feedback and recommendations. Instead of you ordering a sandwich or an Uber or booking a hotel, you could just ask it to do it. This was kind of the hope that everyone had around Siri and Alexa, but those aren't really genuinely AIs or intelligent agents of any sort. They're really just sort of a voice-enabled search engine, right? Quite limited at that. So what you want is this type of intelligent agent that actually acts as a proxy as your interface, right? Where you can use natural ways of sort of speaking or typing in plain language, have it interact with systems, have it offer recommendations, have it even automate tasks for you, being able to interact with smart home devices and temperatures and smart refrigerators, and even all the way to robots and drones and cars and the rest. Most importantly, you want a type of agent that can predict, can adapt, and can learn and incorporate information in real time. So the kinds of AIs that can be built on the KOSM platform are a whole new class of AI. A type of general intelligent agent that will be able to learn and adapt, be applicable and more useful for you as an individual and for businesses and enterprises, and even in the functioning of sort of Internet of Things connected devices, robots, drones, cars, and et cetera. So what you get is a different type of intelligent agent that can learn from information that's coming in any format. It can plan, and then it can take action in apps and devices and drones, robots, et cetera, et cetera. And so the result here is something I think quite exciting. It's an AI designed to understand you, right? Designed to understand our world, both the logical and physical understanding of the world, the objects, the rules, the activities, and then be able to more safely and intelligently assist us in operating to meet our goals, whatever those might be. So again, that's the kind of application. That's the new app, a type of intelligent application that adapts and learns in real time, builds its knowledge. And our Cosmos platform is designed to build these types of intelligent agents for all types of different use cases, right? And so we'll be rolling out this developer toolkit in the next couple of quarters. So we've been building applications, these AI agents ourselves for the last couple of years, but now we're about to release this and let those 10 million developers I mentioned building smartphone apps, trying to figure out how to build smart apps now, AI-based applications, give them access to this so that they can start developing those solutions. And then the world's first AI app store, which will roll out next year, which essentially become an app store for consumers and businesses to start to incorporate these agents for different capabilities into different systems in our lives. And finally, a bit like the World Wide Web, our agents are able to not only speak to us, but can interact with each other. So now you get a network of agents that can coordinate activities between multiple parties, can interact at not just individual scales, but at city scales, in supply chains, automating functions and sharing knowledge across the network. So it's a little bit like the Apple formula, right? The winning formula here was make it easy to build, make it easy to run, and make it easy to sell smartphone apps, right? And they did this by enabling third-party developers to make these millions of applications that drove billions of users and trillions of dollars of value. This is what VERS is positioned to do, not for the smartphone era, but essentially for the smart application or the AI era, right? And our goal here is to really become the Apple for AI. And essentially follow that same formula into this new sort of, not the information age, but what we might call the intelligence age. Now, the current state of the art that we talked about, well, really the approach that everyone else is taking is not based on biological intelligence or neuroscience. It's based on taking as much data as possible, so-called big data, and building an AI that is far more akin to like a oil refinery. So you're taking kind of crude oil and you're trying to process that oil and get some usable fuel out of it. Now, that process takes several years. It costs millions and millions of dollars. This is how ChatGPT was made. In fact, if you go to the website, you'll see may have limited knowledge of the world before 2021. That's because it took 2 years and a bunch of data scientists and the power of a small sun to basically kind of cook all that information from the public web into something like this little black box that comes out of it called ChatGPT. The problem with this approach is it's wildly inefficient. It's basically based on historical data and pattern recognition. It's extremely expensive. Because you're crawling public data, it doesn't know anything about you personally. It can't help you directly in your life outside of a handful of sort of generic abstractions or publicly sort of known models. The data is inherently biased. You get it, the output is a black box that even the developers themselves and the data scientists themselves don't really know how to manage well. And then The worst part is they're inaccurate. They make stuff up. They lie. New York Times, 3 days ago, essentially cover was the new Bing chat GPT sort of incorporated into the Bing website for search, gaslighting someone. If I go on chat GPT, it knows who I am, and it knows that I wrote the book. But if I ask it what the chapters are, it literally just makes up chapters, and very authoritatively in sounding, to where I had to go double check. I don't think those are the right chapters, right? And so these are not the ideal systems you want for operating critical systems in the world, industrial systems, even your personal information or data. They're quite good for content generation, but they are extremely limited in terms of their reliability, and the cost is really high. So maybe 5 companies in the world have been able to develop these. Our approach is completely different. Our system automatically takes unstructured data and structures it. And this is a bit how the brain works, where the synapses and the axons between points of information get modeled. And so our system has an implicit understanding, an explicit understanding as opposed to an implicit understanding derived from patterns. So it's able to understand the relationships more like how the human brain understands structure, understands hierarchy, understands relationships. It's not just about collecting the dots, it's about connecting them. So our system is able to do that, and it's able to do it in essentially real time. More importantly, it means that these knowledge models, these COSMs, can be updated with new information, and the current state-of-the-art AI cannot. This is why we keep hearing about Teslas crashing into, things that no 17-year-old would end up crashing into. It's because the training data might say something like, here's 1 million examples of stop signs on the right side of the road. And then one day the Tesla's driving down the freeway, you're on your phone, and it's driving behind a truck that the city's moving stop signs in, and there's like 10, 20 stop signs in the back of the truck, and it doesn't know what to do, so it hits the brakes. Our system wouldn't do that in a car because it would understand the context of the actual operations it's performing in. And so this is a whole different way of structuring information that is really just more akin to the way humans process information. And this is part of the key to our positioning on the field here. We're going to enable everyone to have that capability. So we started by building our own agents first. So we built one called Wayfinder. We released this a couple of years ago. This is like our first proof of concept. It's a navigation agent for warehouse workers. Essentially maps the 3-dimensional environment of a warehouse. It maps the inventory of all the products to those positions in space, understanding, I said, like both the logic and physics of information. And then it basically lets every single worker have their own agent that routes that worker intelligently through the facility. So say you have to go get 20 items in a row in a 200,000 square foot facility. The workers don't know the best route. Everyone's trying to kind of pick their own route. And this is far more like Uber, where you don't need to know all the addresses or restaurants or museums in New York, or have been a cabbie there for 30 years. You can literally have the system sort of guide you. So this resulted in 35% productivity gains over state of the art. It's live right now as we speak. There's about 1,000 workers using it in 15 locations across the US and Canada. And that first proof of concept in an industry we really knew nothing about, but had a good sense that it would be useful for, resulted in a $26.5 million, that's US 10-year contract. Now that's just a test application for our platform. This then resulted in Blue Yonder, the largest warehouse management solution provider in the world, 3,500 customers, over 80 countries. Half of the businesses at your local mall, the big ones, probably run their distribution centers off this. They then, we did a reseller agreement, which we announced, I think, in November with Blue Yonder, to then resell our Wayfinder agent to their current customers. This is where we'd expect to see something like $1 to $2 million per customer per year, with a soft target of about 10% conversion. So with just one agent in one industry with one reseller, you can see a direct path to several $100 million in revenue over the next 3 years. And that's kind of the equivalent of Apple Maps when the iPhone came out. Like, yes, it's there, but it was the other apps that were really valuable. There's 2 other agents that we built. I'll just run through these really quickly. One's called Data Lens. Data Lens essentially lets you kind of have a single search engine as an enterprise across all of your different data sets. Every enterprise has this fundamental problem where they'd like to have analytics. They'd like to be able to assess things like the true cost of a product, or understand, the relationship between data that's in an operational database or that's in an employee information database, or inventory or customer data. And none of these systems really work together. The data's in different formats, and if you grow through acquisition, you can end up with 50 different systems that don't talk together. Our platform essentially allows the development of this data lens agent, and it synthesizes all that data across all those systems and essentially gives a single platform with an intelligent agent that then the businesses can start to ask questions about their information. In this case, this is a pilot with the world's largest cold storage company, which we just demonstrated this in a phase 1 pilot a couple of weeks ago. They make about $5 billion a year in revenue. They think that they're losing 10 to 20% because they can't assess the true cost per pallet. Now here, the value proposition isn't about how fast you can route a worker through space, but it's the cost of the amount of energy that goes into refrigeration of frozen things like strawberries and ice cream and shrimp and the rest. So what they don't know is, what is the position of this pallet and what costs from the rental of the square footage of one of 400 buildings around the world, plus the labor costs, plus the energy costs, where maybe it was in a -15 room for a week and a half, and then it was in a plus 35, Fahrenheit room. Being able to search across all that, understand both the physical and logical data sets, is something that businesses have been striving for forever. We just effectively demonstrated that, and this is going to roll out as a new product as well. Finally, the last one is called Guardian. Remember, these are just the first 3 apps. Like when the iPhone launched, it had about 10 of their own apps on their operating system. We've done the same thing here, but that is not our core focus. But Guardian's a regulatory agent. We had an 7-figure contract with the European Commission. This is an agent that basically enables regulatory enforcement of AI-powered drones, all in five countries across Europe. And what we're doing here is we're translating the laws in multiple languages into something that AIs can understand, where they can fly, how high they can fly, how fast they can fly in different regions, essentially setting up the regulatory framework for AI-powered activities, of physical activities like flying a drone or ultimately driving a car or a ship or anything else. And so this becomes really critical because, as you can see here, it's important that as we make artificial intelligence more intelligent, that we also have reliable ways of enforcing our laws in a format that they can understand how to comply with. Essentially, we have a pipeline of a handful of very large Fortune 500s, nearly 100 companies we've spoken to in the last 2 years, that all want to either use the current applications I just mentioned or start to build their own applications on Cosmos. And we're forming relationships with large resellers like Blue Yonder, like Deloitte and Accenture and others, so that they can help to start to build industrial and enterprise applications. And as you can see, this is McKinsey saying that the kinds of applications that AI is going to contribute to are going to be nearly everything, right? Obviously, transport and logistics, but automotive and manufacturing, healthcare, banking, high tech, oil and gas, right? Insurance, media and entertainment, aerospace and defense. This is significant because what I want you to think about here is that in the industrial age, we offloaded physical labor to machines, and that this was a huge benefit to the GDP and essentially how we've grown as a civilization. What's happening right now is not just more information, but the use of that information in such a way that we're offloading cognitive labor, right? We're offloading mental labor. This is why people are able to now write entire articles in minutes with ChatGPT, or generate artwork in minutes. That would take more artwork has been created in the last 3 or 4 months than in the entire history of humanity. So what happens when you can start to 10x the functionality and optimization of all these different industries? Well, that's what our platform is designed to enable, not just the generation of content, but the actually understanding of context and the optimization and orchestration of activities. Finally, we expect to make this announcement this coming week. We're going to be rolling out our first consumer product. This is called GIA. So GIA is a code name for General Intelligent Agent. And GIA would be something that everyone here would be able to use, right? Imagine a personal intelligent agent that could be the main interface to your digital life. Have it interact with websites and have it search information for you and summarize things. How about analyzing all of your investments and your different portfolio companies? And you can just ask a question to it. Hey, what was that company's quarterly earnings? Why don't you go crawl their website? Let me know if there's any new products. How about you go look at their competitors and let me know what your risk assessment is around where they're positioned in the market, or have a look, keep an eye out for regulations that might impact my investments. So imagine suddenly an intelligent agent that you can interact with voice or with text is going to be able to interact with the web, with applications, send emails, calendar things for you on your behalf, and then even begin to interact with smart home devices and things around you. Like, I'll give you an example. I've got this Oura Ring. It tracks my sleep patterns. And I've also got a 2-year-old who on any given night may or may not sleep or may crawl into bed and kick me in the head for a couple of hours. I'm going to hook this up to GIA so that GIA can track my sleep patterns in real time. And if I've got an early meeting with the team, say at 7 or 8 a.m., that could be moved, and she recognizes I haven't gotten a great night's sleep, you can just automatically update my calendar, send a new request to everybody, find a time on Monday, and then send me a text saying, hey, if you get this and you're up, why don't you go ahead and sleep until 9? It's the kind of little administrative challenges and the sort of logistical drudgery that has come at all of us through our interaction with digital systems. This becomes the main interface for that, really designed to help improve, radically sort of assist us in our lives relative to both our personal and professional lives. So I think this is going to be a game changer. It's more about what it can do for you personally, for your business, and less about having public information like the chat GPTs and the others that really have no nuance or ability to know anything about you. So this is your agent. You can control it. It's going to be able to learn about you, adapt to your preferences, and then be able to facilitate these types of activities. So kind of what I was hinting at before, chat GPT, Stable Diffusion, all these, they essentially is searching the World Wide Web, right? But 5% of the web is maybe available on search engines. Most of the web, the real web, is behind passwords, right? It's behind a login. And so by having something that you actually contribute your data to and make that available as your service, GIA is suddenly able to access the 95% of the data that all the other AIs can't. And that's what's more relevant to us as individuals, as businesses, as enterprises, et cetera. Finally, quick snapshot of the business model. On the enterprise side, you've got a compute structure. You spin up a node in the cloud to run your agent on KOSM. There's transaction fees for when they ping it from a penny down to fractions of a penny. Then there's marketplace fees we take when any developer sells one of their AI agents or solutions to you or I inside of our Cosmos exchange. And then the GIA is probably going to be a subscription model for end users. It'll start out free. We'd likely do something like a $20 a month subscription, which is similar to what ChatGPT has. Again, keep in mind that just being able to chat with a chatbot that was able to have some sense of value drove 100 million users in the last 2.5 months. Which now they're charging a good healthy number of those $20 a month. So that could be something quite significant for us as we roll into the end of the year here. And then of course, when users buy something in the marketplace, we're also able to take a fee there. So as I mentioned in the beginning, this is kind of about this new era of the web, right? Which we call the spatial web. How, with connecting humans, machines, and AI, not a web of pages like the World Wide Web, but a web of spaces filled with sort of the intelligent agents, with sensors and with devices, with robots, with autonomous vehicles. This is a sort of sci-fi world that we're merging into here. And so we wrote this book. It became an international bestseller in 2019. We started the company in 2018, targeting this moment in time, wanting to both tell our story about where the future is going. It's a cautionary tale about which way we'd like it to lean, more towards a white mirror future as opposed to a black mirror future. And then this got picked up by Deloitte in 2020. They wrote this report. This went out to all the CIOs and CTOs in their stable, called The Spatial Web and Web 3.0, What Business Leaders Need to Know About the Next Era of Computing. And essentially, this is where we started getting all this inbound attention from large Fortune 500 companies asking, what have you guys figured out around how you're modeling data, how intelligent agents can operate on that. And this drove a lot of interest towards us. Finally, this is the vice chair of Deloitte at the time, saying the impact of Web 3.0, the spatial web, will dwarf that of the internet. And he has since left and joined our board. He is now chairman of the board of VERS today, along with John DeVos. John ran a $4 billion fund at Invesco, and G. Scott Paterson, who was the former chair of the Toronto Stock Exchange. The company is currently trading on the NEO. The founders hold about 62 of 118 million shares. We've raised roughly about 33 million Canadian over the last since November 2020. You can see the snapshot of the broker warrants there. And finally, to wrap it all up, the real question is, okay, great. So every 15 years, this whole stack shifts and new winners come out of nowhere. Incumbents often miss the boat on this and can become the infrastructure layer. This is exactly where VERS is positioned. But here's the part that I want you to think of as a retail investor. For the first half of that era, 7+ years here, all of the innovation and the returns that come from those investments are classically accrued to the venture capital guys, private equity, right? So you don't get to touch these companies until the 500,000x, and then the few that get picked out to go public 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now, that's when you get to start playing. So where are you going to get your exposure to AI? You can invest in Microsoft to get a little exposure to OpenAI. You can't invest in OpenAI directly. They're private. Same with all the rest of them. Google just put $300 million into Anthropic at a $5 billion valuation. They haven't even launched anything yet. So you're going to have strategics and venture capital pouring, who are sitting on $300 billion in dry powder right now, pouring all the investment into these companies. Now, VERS is probably the only pure play horizontal AI infrastructure company that is available in the public markets. And a year from now, of course, you're going to have 1,000 companies saying that they're AI. It's going to be really hard to tell. So I think that what I want to share with you today is the idea that we designed our company to be ready at this moment in time. Even we didn't know how fast it was going to explode, but we did know it was around this period of time. And we've been developing, getting traction, driving revenue. And then now over the next couple of quarters, we're finally ready to roll out right at the right time, right as the markets hopefully are starting to recover here and provide this new AI infrastructure layer for the next generation. So that's essentially the chat here. I'm happy to take any of your questions.
Gabe, thank you very much. That was fascinating. I've got pages here and notes I want to ask you. With your current products, you've got the warehouse system and then the logistics one in the freezer. Why start? You seem to have started off in the logistics warehouse space. Why was that sort of the first entry point for your platform?
Well, for two reasons. One, it's a very, very difficult environment, right? It's extremely dynamic. In the case of e-commerce, it's real time. Every single day is a little different in there. And they had a serious problem, which was that there's 100% turnover of human workers in a year, every year in this sort of warehouse and logistics space. And so it's a perfect place to enable AI augmentation of humans, which is way more cost effective than the purchasing of robots. So just a good sort of environment to start to test out in. Incidentally, it's also one of the first places where AI, robotics, humans, and sensors all are operating at the same time, which is probably a little microcosm of what our smart cities are going to look like in a decade or two, right? And so we're both practical on one sense and very forward thinking in the next, that we've learned a lot of things about essentially the inside of a warehouse looks like a city. It's roads and streets with addresses and things moving around. And so even has a sort of inbound and outbound, like as if it were ports. So that was the reason. And like I said, we were able to gain significant traction, even getting the biggest player in the space to become our key reseller, because literally no one was capable of that kind of innovation. I think it's just a really good sort of insurance policy to de-risk the company as well, because you can show real scalable revenue. If you're getting 8-figure contracts off single customers, it's a pretty safe bet. So you've got sort of the green grass and the blue sky version of the thing playing out at the same time.
All right. you mentioned before, and I think there has not been a hype cycle like AI to date. It's absolutely remarkable. And there are so many companies are obviously immediately putting out AI press releases, even before AI was kind of sketchy and doubtful. And I think a lot of these are basically just plugging in a Chat GPT API and saying, look, we're AI now, which is really, you're kind of building the app, not the foundation on it. And then you mentioned you're one of the few sort of real AI meat and bones kind of company, what one potentially invested in, all this VC capital out there. Why did you take the Canadian sort of public venture capital route as opposed to, with your sort of impressive board and so forth, and not go the traditional route of Silicon Valley VCs? I'm sure they would have thrown a few bucks at you.
Yeah, so the answer is very straightforward. We did our research. First of all, we grew up in Silicon Valley. We know the deal. You spin something up, you go kiss the ring at Kleiner Perkins or Sequoia. The way that plays out is you essentially, if you are of the 1% that even would be able to go public, most die. Some just sell in like the $300 to $500 million range within the first, say, 3 years or so. That's not bad. But then if you want to go public, you're looking at a 7 to 8 year sort of run. And then by that time, founders typically have less than 10% of the company. And founding CEOs are typically kicked out at the 4 or 5 year mark. So in part because of the importance of this technology, right? We see this as like akin to the personal computing revolution. This is the personal intelligence revolution. And the power of this technology, and as the inventors, we prefer a scenario where we get to maintain control of the company. We think we're the best stewards of it. And that the public become our investment partners, right? And so this allowed for both of those things to occur, for us to be able to maintain control and for the public to be able to not have to wait 7 years to get a bite at this. And so this was one of the reasons we chose the NEO. Is NEO is a tier 1 exchange that is the same reporting requirements as the NASDAQ, which is where we would expect this thing to end up. All right.
You're launching your platform in the cloud. Are you, this is a software platform, or are you launching your own server farms to sort of host it, or is this going up onto AWS or Azure or Google Cloud?
Yeah.
And I guess sort of attached to that with the Google Cloud, are there special hardware requirements like tensor chips or some other kind of hardware required to sort of juice this up a bit?
No, you don't need any juice, because we're not training neural nets. We literally have created essentially a model that is able to learn in real time and update its knowledge. So, you don't need the power of a small sun for a human mind to work. You need a banana and a glass of water will do it, right? And so it's designed on the physics of efficiency. So no, you don't need any special hardware. In fact, some of these capabilities will run on the edge, the devices themselves, on small sort of, small handheld devices. So essentially the platform is designed as a hybrid. So it could be cloud or edge. It could be hybrid cloud, meaning you can store data in any place that you like. You can store it on Azure, you can store it on Google Cloud, you can store it on Amazon. And ultimately, we're going to let businesses and users decide where they want to store their data. We have no interest in your data. We're not crawling your data to resell it. We don't need big data to train our AIs. We don't train them. We basically provide them a sort of atlas of human knowledge, and then they start to slot information and grow with you as they learn. So it doesn't require the kind of horsepower that we've classically seen in the neural net approach. This is more akin to nuclear fusion than nuclear fission. It doesn't have all the negative byproducts. It doesn't take the same sort of set of challenges and negative repercussions that come with that. In the concept of fusion, you're actually getting out more than you put in.
All right. So is it going on AWS or Azure, or just a generic kind of server farm cloud? Which cloud will it be hosted on?
You can host it on any cloud.
Oh,
You'll
it's
be able to
your
host it on,
instance, and you
yes.
can, it's sort of like loading it on
You're
my
gonna,
PC.
that,
You can
that's
sort of
right.
pull up an instance on
Yeah,
wherever you want it to go.
yeah, what we want to do is provide pointers for where you would like to. So, there will be, we may end up sort of bulk purchasing and amortizing, so that a lot of users do not want to bother with that decision. But some companies have very specific configuration preferences and only will be on Azure, right? And won't be on AWS. Most of the developers in the world, most of the apps are running on AWS today. Google Cloud is trying to get their own traction. So there's all kinds of different reasons to host stuff in different ways. We want to basically be very accommodating and adaptable to that without having real restrictions. So we'll be rolling out hybrid hosting solutions over time.
All right, I am going to go to audience questions here. I'm not too sure how much time you have, Gabe. We're like maybe 10 minutes into an hour on this. So I don't know if you give me some guidance on that, or if we got a hard top of the hour stop here, let me know and we'll try to sort of filter questions appropriately.
Take a quick look. I do have a hard stop at the top of the hour.
Okay, so we'll do this.
A good 7 minutes to get through whatever.
Okay.
Whatever's there.
How have your priorities changed, if at all, as a result of this AI acceleration, this hype cycle? Because if ChatGPT hadn't shown up a couple of months ago, has that sort of accelerated or redirected your priorities?
Yeah, I would hope that it has accelerated every single business's priorities in the technology space. And so it certainly has affected ours, in part because the biggest challenge we faced over the last few years is what you call the 0 to 1 problem. How to explain what the value proposition of artificial intelligence is, that it's going to be big, that there's going to be this traction, it's going to be the new application layer, right? Now, that's kind of something that people are understanding because it's a zeitgeist moment, it's a pop culture phenomenon. So now we can have conversations about 1 to 5, right? So 1 to 5 is, what does that mean and who wants to use it? The fact that now on, say the day after New Year's, 10 million developers that were building smartphone apps were all doing the exact same thing that day, which is trying to figure out how to build artificial intelligence-based apps, suddenly enables a market that we've been anticipating, but that emerged overnight. And so this has accelerated our plans, which was initially to enable sort of manual access to our platform at the end of this year. Now we're looking at the middle of the year. We've also been able to accelerate some of the automation of our entire pipeline. And so that's, I think we have, in the last quarter, a handful of breakthroughs internally, plus the sort of zeitgeist moment, has accelerated the company about 2 years. Where I would have hoped we would be in 2 years is like where it feels we're coming across this next quarter, including the rollout of GIA. Which was a complete breakthrough moment for us, partially based on the research of Karl Friston and active inference. And so those capabilities came much quicker than we had anticipated. And I think this gives us a really excellent opportunity to be able to be one of the stronger voices in the marketplace as the cacophony around AI starts to emerge over the course of the next year. So I think 2 years from now would be a little too late to be fighting 1,000 other people on the field. Now we're basically able to get down there and put our flag there as one of the first and hopefully one of the big winners.
And you mentioned some guidance on timelines, I guess, for the GIA service. Was that a couple of weeks or a couple of months ahead that we should be expecting to see this?
Well, I think we're going to be announcing it very soon. And
okay.
I think that the rollout will start this summer.
Okay, gotcha. All right. I have a question here. How does KOSM compare to C3 AI?
So C3 AI is using essentially machine learning as a process. So as an enterprise company, you'd say, okay, well, here's all my data from the last 5 years. Can you build a custom machine learning set of tools, models, et cetera, and then run on this in order to extract sort of analytics? The problem with this is that then let's say the next year you want to do a new set of analytics. The way that these neural nets work is that you want statistical data. So now you got to do 5 years plus year 6, and then now plus year 7. So every time you go, you got to add another set. They can't learn information in real time, so they can't adapt. This is the same problem you have with ChatGPT. the data is 2 years old. So you really kind of have this historical looking backwards at your company sort of perspective, as opposed to being able to model all that knowledge explicitly, understand exactly what the relationships are between all of the different systems, data, customers, earnings, whatever, and then start to get predictions and recommendations going forward that then adapt. Oh, look, COVID hit. Now what do we do? Well, there was no COVID model for every business when we went into COVID, but our system would allow that adaptation to be considered, and you would have essentially a set of tools that will help you adapt your business in real time. So it's dealing with a whole different sort of approach to modeling information, and as a result, it's far cheaper, it's easier to deploy, and it's forward-looking. All right, really trying to help your business going in as it's moving into the future, not just trying to predict everything from what you did, the last 5 years.
All right. Could you please talk about your current fundraising and the current state of your balance sheet and the finance side of ththings?
Yeah, so we are in the process of closing a convertible debenture right now. I think it's looking, I think we were planning on raising about 5 million. It's looking closer to 10 or 15 based on the current raise. I think we reported 3 million on the balance sheet going into December. And we're forecasting a couple of big conversions for some of these pilots, which could be in the $10 to $50 million a pop space, which we'd hope to report to the street in the next quarter or so.
All right. And you said fully a top tier, NEO is a top tier reporting platform. What are your plans for a US listing? I would think that is in the pathway at some point.
We are exploring those options as we speak.
All right. So could that be a 2023 event, or would that be something more to look forward to into 2024?
We are interested in a more near-term transition.
Fair enough. All right. How good is your IP protection?
Well, we are the kind of people that think ahead, as you can hopefully tell. So we, a couple years ago, hired the former head of global IP strategy from SAP, Jürgen Vollrath, who basically helps us with our entire IP strategy. So some of that's about patents, some of that's about copyright, some of that's about trademarks, some of that is about making things available as open standards or open source, and some of that is just trade secrets, things you definitely don't want to talk about, especially with big multi-trillion-dollar companies that can just go read it and build it anyway, and then you can sue them for 10 years. So I think we have a very mature approach to that. We have a handful of patents now and quite a few in process that will be coming out also between now and summer before we launch GIA.
All right. I'm not quite sure about this question, but I'll throw it out. What kind of effect do your heat maps on the overall value proposition? Does that make sense to you?
No. What kind of effect do your heat maps on the, I don't know what that means.
All right. All right. I thought that was, what industries, when you, I guess, which of your platforms you've got, like Cosmo is a bigger thing. What industries do you think are you going to have the most impact on with your technology? Initially, you've targeted sort of the warehouse logistics space, but when it's sort of, you get the overall platform, do you think it's going to be finance? Is it going to be media? Is it going to be any thoughts on where your earliest traction is going to hit?
Well, I have a thought, but I don't think it's a good answer. So the answer is no. Platforms. It's not about sales, it's about platforms. So you're enabling millions of developers to start to build whatever they want to build. So it's not really about targeting an industry any more than Apple did or Shopify did, right? With that being said, I actually think GIA will be very useful for mothers. I actually think mothers are the administrative heart and soul, the logistics managers of many of our lives, right? With families and kids and all the rest. And having some tool that would enable them to track and schedule and update and adapt, I think will be really valuable. And I wonder how that might impact society. What if instead of like 35% productivity for warehouse workers, what if it was 35% efficiency gains for mothers? What would that do? I think college students will also, going to be driven to this. That generation is going to be very, sort of digital natives around this. So I think that will be very exciting as well. Unfortunately, I have to go to my next meeting. I think we're up for a time today, but I really enjoyed the opportunity to speak with everybody here and look forward to any follow-up questions people have.
All right. Well, yeah, please shoot myself or Versus any follow-up emails. I'll forward them to the correct people there. Gabe, thank you very much for giving us the time to dig into this. We could have gone a few hours longer here. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to your news flow and seeing what comes next. And I really hope we can get you back here for a follow-up.
Thank you, Martin. Appreciate you making the time for me. I'm glad everyone that attended showed up, and looking forward to the next time. Take care.